Samuel Ejo awoke, screaming. The dreams had been getting worse, more frequent, more vivid. The voices of his fathers, the sacred groves, continued to call him as he slept. The calls were getting louder. They grew angrier at those who had wronged them, those who had degraded the sanctuary of their holy sites for the purposes of entertainment, at mankind, with all their destructive gluttony. With sweat running from his brow, he tentatively approached the wardrobe at the foot of the bed in his small apartment. Hands shaking, he reached out and flung the doors open. It was there again, the African tribal outfit, glorious in its resplendence of fur and feather. At its feet lay the gleaming razor-sharp pair of African trumbash knives. Their sickle-like foot-long curved blade and ornately carved handles seemed to call to him. Twice before he had destroyed the outfit. The first time throwing it in the trash, only to see it return to his wardrobe a week later. The second time he burnt it, incinerating the beautiful craftsmanship of his tribal ancestors in a brazier in his backyard. And once more it had returned. Unsteadily, Samuel closed the door to the wardrobe and walked to the bathroom to splash water on his face. The cold water snapped him back to reality. He flicked on the radio as he dressed into his police uniform.
Despite the death of GPTO Incorporated's head of African operations in a bizarre tribal killing, Group President Christo Venter insists the Sacred Groves visitor attraction will reopen next week as planned.
We have assurances from Police Colonel Adebayo that there will be no further delays to the reopening of the site. This is an important moment in the future development of...
Samuel grabbed the radio in rage and flung it at the wall, shattering it into pieces. He calmed himself and left the apartment to drive to the station. Fists clenching and jaw grinding, he barely tolerated the short drive to work. He parked as normal and strode determinedly into the building and through the open plan office area, oblivious to the greetings of his colleagues. He burst into Colonel Adebayo's office unannounced, as his co-workers looked on in astonishment. "Colonel, you are making a mistake," he almost yelled. "What are you talking about, Ejo?" Adebayo asked. "You cannot reopen the groves," Samuel spat. "You better watch your tone, Ejo," Adebayo countered. "You see this?" he continued, pointing to the piece of paper on his desk. Samuel's eyes looked down. Almost theatrically, Adebayo picked up the overly expensive fountain pen and scrawled his signature across the bottom of the page. "It is done," he announced. "The groves will reopen next week." Samuel flew across the desk at him, sending items on his desktop crashing to the floor. He grabbed Adebayo by the scruff of the neck and dragged him from his chair. With his face inches away from his superior officer, he calmly said, "You'll pay for this." Abruptly, he was pulled away by two colleagues who had heard the commotion. As Samuel struggled, they held him firm while Colonel Adebayo straightened his tie. "You have gone too far, Ejo. You hear me? You are suspended. Suspended. Get his badge and get him out of here." Adebayo ordered the two officers who had already started dragging Samuel from the room. The colonel dusted down his jacket and started to pick up the items that had been knocked off his desk, carefully placing the brown envelope marked GPTO Incorporated into the top drawer of his desk. It was 3 p.m. the following afternoon when Samuel Ejo awoke again, screaming. His body ached in pain. The bright afternoon sunlight flooded his apartment. Again he walked over to the wardrobe. Voices flooded his head as he opened it. He stared at the tribal outfit, as if in a trance. Closing the door to the wardrobe, he stumbled to the bathroom and splashed his face with cold water. It did not wake him fully. He clicked on the television and returned to sit on the edge of the bed, staring blank-eyed at the outfit in the wardrobe. He was vaguely aware of the noises on the television in the background.
Breaking news.
The reporter squawked.
Local police Colonel Kofi Adebayo has been found dead in what appears to be another ritual killing. His body was found displayed in the street.
The words trailed off, lost to Samuel. He fought to keep his eyes open, knowing that when he closed them, he may never open them again as Samuel Ejo. The whispering words, "Avengers in Kanyamba," washed through his head. The loud banging at his front door barely startled him as he gently closed his eyes to accept his fate. Nkanyamba looked down on the sacred groves as the sun began to bathe the sacred site in its life-giving light. His mind wandered as he idly fingered the ornate necklace of teeth that hung from his neck, part of the ancient tribal outfit that adorned the Avenger. He could not remember the time before, if there was a time before. A vague image of sitting under great trees and soaking in the peace of the groves washed over him. His anger flared. Closing his eyes, he dropped to his haunches and slowed his breathing. "Command me," he uttered gently. "Our son." The voices in his head rang back. "We have been wronged. We demand recompense. You must avenge us. The groves called back to him. They must be judged in Kanyamba. The soothing voice continued. They must atone. Kill them, the voice commanded. Kill them all. Inkanyamba opened his eyes and stood to his full height, the rising sun making the sweat on his beautiful and toned dark skin glisten in stark contrast to the ghostly white bone mask he wore on his face. The pair of deadly trumbash knives sheathed on his back sang to him, urging him to unleash his holy fury onto the spoilers. First he must cleanse. The sins must be washed away to allow him to judge with a pure heart. The defilers still entered the park. The incessant noise rang through his ears as he entered the sacred waters of the holy groves. He stood waist high in the waters, his silhouette against the horizon, framed by the tall plants of the groves, making him look like some kind of swamp thing. He anointed the holy water on his muscular torso and said one final prayer to his fathers. He then unsheathed the trumbash knives from his back and slowly raised his head to look towards the centre of the park, locking eyes with one of the intruders. She sees you, the voice rang in his head. He knew the words were true. Inkanyamba witnessed a change in the face of the woman, a young African woman. Her eyes, hard and unwavering, widened as her gaze fell on him. She ran, hurrying out of sight. Now is the choice, our son, the voice echoed. You must choose. Punishment or mercy. Will you avenge us? The noise of them rang in his ears. He closed his eyes again. Visions flooded to him. Blasphemers, defilers, abusing the sacred lands, laughing, taunting. His anger began to rise, a red haze boiling up from within him, the gift of his fathers. He was their tool, their justice, their avenger. He opened his eyes with a snap. Punishment, he said, slowly, deliberately. A chill ran through the sacred groves. Our son, the voice called again. Avenge us. Kill them. Deliberately he turned, his senses tuned. He cocked his head, listening. The shrill laughter came sailing through the air. Visions flooded his senses, them, laughing at his sacred fathers. In doing so, they disrespected him. Now he wanted their blood. They would pay. The sun fell in his eyes as he snaked from the waters of the holy groves towards the sound. As he reached the entrance of the sacred waters, he could see the source of the sound on the wooden walkway above him. Deliberately he climbed the steps to the walkway, approaching the defiler head-on at a steady walk. The man began to point, his mouth turning to a smile, a look of wonder on his face. Inkanyamba approached head-on. He did not see a man, despite his loud and colourful shirt. Inkanyamba saw only the black soul. All other colours faded away. The greens of the groves blurred in his peripheral vision, streaking past at speed as he broke into a jog, focusing only on his prey. As the defiler was about to speak, Inkanyamba unsheathed the holy knives from his back without breaking a stride, arching them over his head in a crossing motion as he deliberately fell to one knee in front of the man, stopping his swipe abruptly with the knives at waist level. Inkanyamba stood. There was a pause of a second or so before a pair of foot-long gashes appeared like a red cross on the man's body. Blood spilled from his mouth as he looked down to see his entrails slipping from him to the wooden slats of the bridge. The man tried to scream, to call out, as he began to fall to his knees, as if falling in prayer in front of the Avenger. But only blood gurgled from his lips as his body fell to lay face first in front of Inkanyamba. Our son, the voice called in his head. She takes from us, the father said. The anger in him rose again. He closed his eyes. Visions of the girl he had seen in the holy groves came to him. She was with others, shepherding them, their saviour, his denier. She takes our prey, the voices continued. Unleash your wrath of blood. His ears pricked. Another, close. He stood and skipped over the corpse of the first defiler, picking up speed as he chased the sound. Another stood in front of him as he emerged from the undergrowth, this time a woman, her soul just as corrupt with blackness as the first. Her back was turned. He did not stop. There was no honour in this fight, only punishment for the guilty. Inverting the knife in his right hand deftly so the curved blade pointed upwards, he thrust it forward. The cleansing glory of the weapon penetrated through the spine of the woman, its tip just managing to protrude through her stomach before he uncaringly removed it. As she fell to the floor, he was already turning, his senses now attuned. The blood felt warm around his bare feet as he turned, giving life to the sacred groves beneath him. Denied for so long, the fathers cried out as the blood began to sate them, causing red flowers to spring from the grateful soils. He could sense more of them. They gathered near the sacred shrine. He ran, at pace, towards the park's lost and found office where a husband and his wife were remonstrating. Their noise rang in his ears. He did not understand them. Gibberish. A brief thought came as he approached them. Had he ever understood them? Was there a time when he would have listened to their petty excuses? His anger rose again. The thought went. He could see the woman. She was pushing the man next to him and pointing. He slowed his pace to a walk. "Do something, you idiot!" The woman's words rang in his ears, meaningless to him. "Kill them," his fathers commanded. The woman fell as the holy trumbash bit her throat, her life force coating the tribal outfit of the Avenger in its glorious bright red blood, her black soul released to the custody of the fathers. Inkanyamba slowly turned towards the other, allowing the defiler to bask in the beauty of the force that would become his doom. The man ran towards the sacred shrine. Inkanyamba lifted his head to the heavens and called out in triumph to the fathers. The groves responded to their son. A clap of thunder filled the air and sacred rains began to fall, an accompaniment to the feast of anger that was being served. Inkanyamba's fickle temper was again beginning to flare as he followed the man to the sacred shrine. The rains washing the blood from his ivory mask, he appeared like a ghost at the shrine. He could hear the gibberish of the coward. He was yelling at another defiler, a tall man with his back to the Avenger. The tall one was laughing. "It's just part of the attraction." The noise stopped as Inkanyamba's hand fell on the shoulder of the tall one, turning him to face his fate. Inkanyamba saw the man's eyes change as he was spun around, his face inches from the ghostly mask. Again the knives did their work, slicing the man's midriff. This one did scream, a high piercing sound that clashed against another clap of thunder as the rains continued to fall. Inkanyamba turned again to face the coward, the one who had fled from his wrath. The terrified man once again turned and ran. Inkanyamba watched the man leave. He paused and slowly kneeled before the sacred shrine. He must show respect for the fathers. The Avenger meticulously placed his knife on the wet grass in front of him and bowed his head to pray. As he began, his prayer was interrupted. "Hey, let me just carve my initials right here." Again, the words meaningless to him, but he felt the father scream in pain as the knife of the defiler pierced the tree adjacent to the shrine. Thunder again boomed around the groves and lightning lit up the sky. The man with the knife withdrew it from the tree as the lightning flash illuminated the ghostly face of the Avenger rising from prayer at the shrine through the rain-shrouded scene. Inkanyamba looked on curiously as the man shielded the woman behind him and pointed the blades towards him. Then a sound to the east, shouting, frantic. "That's him! There!" The coward had reappeared, this time accompanied by a man in green holding a device of some kind that crackled with lightning. "Hey!" the green man called, his lightning box fizzing away in his hand. Inkanyamba regarded the quartet and backed away from the tree killer. Moving almost mesmerically in the haze of the warm rain, he placed himself equidistant between the two aggressors. "Hey!" the green man said again. "Drop the knives, my friend." Inkanyamba did not drop the knives. He spun, cartwheeling towards the green man, blades flashing. The flourish from the acrobatics finished with the razor knife slicing through the air balletically, carving the jugular of the green man, who dropped the lightning box before falling to the floor. He turned to his other opponent, the tree killer with the knife. He saw the woman tugging at the arm of the man. "Come on!" The words rang from her mouth, meaningless to the Avenger. "He's coming and there's nothing we can do." The tree killer turned to his woman briefly. Inkanyamba pounced, swift as lightning. Again the sacred trumbash knife delivering justice, its razor's edge slicing the tree killer's hand clean off. The man turned to look at his missing hand, his woman screaming behind him. As the man looked down, Inkanyamba raised his knee into his stomach, doubling him over. The torment was ended swiftly with the Avenger driving both knives into the back of the man's neck, leaving his lifeless body to fall to the ground. The father screamed again in triumph. Thunder filled the sky, muffling the screams of the remaining defilers as they stood frozen in fear. The Avenger advanced on the coward who had fled from him twice before, the one who had summoned the green man. This time justice would not be avoided. Unable to move, the man closed his eyes as his fate approached. Calmly, the Avenger lifted his knives. Then he felt pain. A blow from his blind side knocked him sideways just as he was about to deliver his sentence. The war club struck him in the ribs, the holy weapon calming his anger along with breaking his bones. He fell to the wet floor at the foot of the shrine, instinctively rolling sideways as the heavy head of the war club struck the ground next to him. He deftly flipped back to his feet and faced his tormentor. It was the shepherd, the one who had seen him as he cleansed. He searched inside her soul for blackness. It was not as obvious as the others, but it was there, deep inside. "Come on, you son of a bitch," she uttered. An African warrior queen. Her toned and muscled dark skin glistened in the rain that soaked her white vest. She twirled the holy war club in her hands as she faced him. "Thank God!" The voice of the man behind him came as he eyed his opponent. Nkanyamba spun, pirouetting on one leg like a ballerina. A trumbash knife, an extension of his meticulously positioned arm, sliced the man's throat, finally releasing the black soul of the coward to the custody of the Sacred Fathers. Within a split second he was back facing his opponent as the man fell to the floor. Again the fathers roared. The warrior queen held her head, disorientated by the voices of the groves. She righted herself. "Well, I don't know how, but I've angered him," she spoke, seemingly to no one in particular. Nkanyamba sprang at the warrior, his blades whirling. She tried to counter with the war club, swinging it in an upward motion, but the Avenger was too fast. His blade swung down, catching her shoulder. She stumbled backwards. He came at her again, the knife slicing through the rain-filled air. This time she blocked with the club, parrying the strike as the blade rushed towards her face. The Avenger screamed in rage, his anger again building at the denial of his justice. The warrior's face did not change. As he studied her, she stepped backwards and cricked her neck to one side, spitting blood to the floor and fixing him with her stare. This one was different to the others. Then she came at the Avenger. The heft of the war club she was carrying struck him on the head as he tried to avoid her attack, the holy weapon again calming his rage. The tree killer's woman screamed. The noise cut through Nkanyamba, feeding his wrath again. He grasped the opportunity and quickly silenced the distraction with his blades to focus on his tormentor. His blood boiling, he was barely able to hear the words of his fathers. "Leave her, our son. There are others. They will escape our wrath. Kill them." And with that, he was gone. The warrior queen searched for him with her eyes as he disappeared into the undergrowth from the sacred shrine. The final defiler was running as he entered the clearing north of the sacred shrine. The Avenger flung the trumbash knife from his hand. It arced through the air, the blade embedding deep between the shoulder blades of the fleeing woman. Her body dropped. Calmly and deliberately, Nkanyamba walked to the body to retrieve the knife and clean the blood from it. The sacred rain stopped. The sun again began to beat down on the sacred groves, the heat warming the wet ground and causing a mist to rise around the Avenger. His ghostly mask glowed brightly in the eerie scene. He turned and dropped to one knee, laying the sacred knives in front of him, again dropping his head to speak to the fathers. "It is done," he stated. "Good, Nkanyamba," the voice of the groves called back. "Now finish it," they commanded. "Kill the girl. Drag her to hell, Nkanyamba. There can be no atonement for her." "It shall be done," he replied, retrieving the knives and purposely heading back towards the sacred shrine. As he approached the shrine, the mists parted. The warrior saw him as he emerged, framed by the rising heat. The sun silhouetted his muscular frame, terrifying and beautiful. He could see the girl was rising from her meditation. She surely was a true warrior queen. It almost pained him to have to kill her. Then he unleashed his wrath, breaking into a sprint and running at the girl. He leapt, arching his back to give more power to the overhead swipe of his knives. His mighty arms came from overhead in a crossing motion, blades first, as he descended on her. The warrior was ready for him. She dropped to her knees and weaved sideways. One of the knives drew blood from her arm as she countered with the war club, swinging it into the arm of the Avenger. Nkanyamba's arm snapped. He dropped the knife from it. The deadly ray spilt to the floor at the foot of the sacred shrine. He screamed with rage and swung wildly with the remaining knife. The girl easily blocked it with the club. However, she failed to see the sweeping leg of the Avenger as he deftly spun and kicked the warrior's legs away from her. She fell to the sodden floor, her head stinging as it struck the ground. The girl righted herself quickly, regaining her feet and staring at the Avenger. Nkanyamba could see the focus in her eyes. He was not prepared for the ferocity of the attack. She came at him, her soul shining a bright blue. His vibrancy blinded the Avenger as she swung her weapon in a furious strike. The war club arced overhead at an incredible speed and hit Nkanyamba in the base of the neck, both shattering his collarbone to pieces and winding him, forcing him to drop his second knife. He staggered backwards as the warrior prepared for the critical blow. His body was racked with pain. Every sinew that screamed added to his anger. He hesitated slightly, still blinded by the girl's glowing soul. Then he saw it again, a hint of black beneath the blue. Avengers! The words rang in his ears as he sprung at the girl. The war club came at him sideways, the air splitting as it cut towards its target. But he was fast. Faster than the girl could have imagined. The Avenger slid to the ground. The wet grass surrounding the sacred shrine propelled him forward at pace, beneath the swing of the weapon. He caught the look of surprise on the warrior's face as he rose from the ground in front of her. His white bone mass connected with her nose as he leapt from his slide. There was a sickening crunch as the impact drove the delicate fragments of bone up into the brain of the warrior queen. She fell backwards and collapsed, dropping the holy war club at her side. Nkanyamba stood above the body, his chest heaving with the force of his breath, unsure of whether his foe was truly dead. Sirens in the background awoke him from his trance. He reverently bent down and closed the eyes of the queen. He said a brief prayer before collecting sacred red dirt from the foot of the shrine and adorning her forehead with it. Finally, he lifted his mask and gently kissed the queen on the forehead, before returning to retrieve his holy knives. Again, he knelt and laid the knives in front of him as if in ceremony. Bowing his head, he addressed the fathers. "It is done, fathers," he said. "No, Nkanyamba. There are more, so many more, our son. But first, there is another. Command me, fathers. She has stolen from us, son. She will threaten us. She will deny our right. She must be defeated. Who, fathers? You know, Nkanyamba. The Raven. She must be punished. It shall be done, fathers."